I built our dream business with my bare hands, but they erased my name from everything. Until the last contract spoke. I built our dream business with my bare hands, brick by brick, breath by breath. And when I say our, I mean mine and Arov's, my childhood friend, my brother by bond, my business partner. And, in the end, my biggest mistake. We started with nothing. No venture capital, no big name investors, no legacy to lean on. Just sleepless nights, borrowed laptops, endless cups of chai, and a burning hunger to prove that we were more than just sons of nobody's. It was supposed to be simple, a startup to help small vendors digitize. Zaire. We called it short, catchy, grounded. My mother named it. She said it meant presence, a word so delicate yet strong. She believed we were building something that would last, something that would leave a mark. And for a while, it did. But back then, I didn't know the cost of silence. It began in my kitchen. I was scribbling on the back of a tattered notebook, figuring out payment flows and microloan models, while Arav made chai. He was always the talker, the charmer, the kind of guy who could walk into a room and have investors nodding before he even opened the pitch deck. Me? I was the builder. I coded, I designed, I ran operations, handled vendors, slept on the floor of our shared flat with my laptop on my chest and a phone buzzing with customer feedback beside me. And I loved it. We didn't care about equity then. We were brothers, remember? The kind who shared shoes in school and fought side by side in college protests. When we filed the company, Arav said, Yar tujhe paperwall kog ya shok hai? Tara nam mir dil mean hai. And like a fool, I believed him. No contracts. No written shares. Just trust. That's all I had, and all I gave. I remember talking to fruit vendors, barbers, tailors, explaining QR codes and UPI before anyone else cared. I built their dashboards, created vernacular tutorials, stayed up nights debugging on their old Samsung Duos. We scaled. Fast. Within 18 months, Zaire was everywhere. News outlets started noticing. Investors lined up. TechCrunch called us India's most human tech startup. Arav was the face. I was the invisible engine. And I didn't mind. Not then. Because I thought I was building something real, not just a company, but a legacy. That's when things started shifting. Subtly at first, the way Arav introduced me changed. From co-founder to my friend who helps. From we built this to I had this idea. My face started vanishing from the website. Our pitch decks, once filled with photos of us grinding at roadside tea stalls, now had glossy pictures of Arav at conferences, shaking hands with ministers, posing with celebrities. I was still working 18 hours a day. Still debugging, still designing, still negotiating vendor deals. But in every boardroom, every article, every panel, I was nowhere. Vai mera naam kya nahin auto press mean? I asked, softly. He smiled. Terracom High Bolta High, Rogov. Two-toe Shadow High, or Shadow High Asli Power Hodi High. And once again, I swallowed the silence. It was our third year. We were closing Series B funding, $12 million. Arav threw a party at a rooftop bar in Delhi. Everyone was there. Investors, celebrities, media. I was outside, on the balcony, watching the city I loved flicker under a polluted sky. When a junior employee, new girl from finance, walked up and said, Sir, you're not on the cap table. My heart paused. What? You're not listed. Only Arav Sharma has founder equity. No mention of a second founder. I laughed. Must be a mistake. I'll check. She nodded, awkwardly. Of course, sir. Sorry. But I knew. And when I checked the documents the next morning, my name was gone. Completely. No shares. No designation. No legal ownership. 3 years. Thousands of hours. Every sleepless night. Every pitch I helped build. Every line of code. And officially, I didn't exist. They say betrayal doesn't come from enemies. But they never tell you how deep it cuts when it comes from your brother. I went straight to Arof's penthouse the morning after the funding party. I didn't knock. I still had the old key. He was sitting on his plush balcony, sipping almond milk coffee like nothing had happened, like my life hadn't just been vacuumed out of existence. Arov, I said quietly, the rage sitting heavy in my throat. Where's my name? He didn't even look surprised. Instead, he sighed. Rogov, please don't be dramatic. Dramatic? My voice cracked. You wiped me out of the company we built, the one I built while you were off giving interviews. He looked at me with that same smile, the one that once felt brotherly. Now it felt cold. I kept you out of the papers for your own good. You're not a people's person. Investors don't get your intensity. I had to make choices to protect the company. I stared at him. So you protected the company by cutting out the person who created it? No. I cut out the liability. His voice was steel now. You never signed anything, Rogov. There's no proof. Just effort. And effort doesn't hold equity in court. That was the moment something inside me shattered. It wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. Worse than being stabbed in the back is being told that the knife was your fault. I contacted lawyers. But every time, the answer was the same. You never signed anything. No partnership deed. No email trail confirming your equity. Just chats. Verbal understanding. It's not enough. He had buried me under my own trust. And while I was busy building dashboards and software, he was building paperwork. Quietly, deliberately, surgically. Suddenly, I was being called a disgruntled ex-employee. They leaked screenshots, out-of-context chats, twisted quotes, fake stories that made me look like a jealous coder who'd been fired for instability. Arov even gave a subtle interview. I wish Rogov well. Sometimes brilliant minds aren't made for structure. And just like that, I was framed as the unstable genius. No startup wanted to hire me. Investors wouldn't take my calls. Even my landlord, who once called me a hero, asked me to vacate. I sold my laptop. I moved back into my mother's old flat, a crumbling one-bedroom near Bijampura, still filled with the smell of her incense sticks and faded memories of hope. I stopped shaving. Stopped eating. Some nights, I even stopped breathing. But one evening, I found something. A file. Tucked into my old Dropbox archive. One forgotten document, buried deep in a folder labeled Vendor Ops. And in it, a signed clause. A contract from year one. Arov had signed it in a hurry during a vendor onboarding, when we were applying for our first payment license. Clause 7.4. The founders, Mr. Raghav Mehra and Mr. Arov Sharma, agreed to mutual representation for the purpose of account registration and business identification under the entity Sayer Digital. There it was. A legal thread. A small, buried key in a fortress of forged locks. You ever hold something so small, so fragile, but feel its weight could bring down empires? That clause, that one forgotten line from a 3-year-old contract, became my matchstick. And I wasn't just going to light a candle with it. I was going to burn their entire house of lies down. I spent the next 2 months in silence. I stopped trying to clear my name in the press. Stopped replying to ex-friends who messaged, "Hope you're healing." Stopped showing up anywhere they expected me to fall apart. Instead, I got to work. The street-side shopkeepers, the flower sellers, the cobblers, the people whose trust I'd earned in Zayer's early days. They remembered me. They remembered the boy who sat on stools, sipped chai, and taught them how to press, receive payment. I wasn't just a ghost to them. I was the beginning. They gave me testimonies. Screenshots. Photos. One even had a selfie from year one, me and Arav, holding up our first working POS system. Founders of Zayer, written on the whiteboard behind us. I compiled it all. Not to shout, but to wait. I used the last of my savings to hire a digital forensics expert, a quiet, gray-haired man named D'Souza who'd worked on bank frauds and legacy disputes. I gave him access to my old drive, Slack archives, email threads, even Arov's forwarded documents. He dug up gold. Deleted email chains. Early spreadsheets showing my equity split. Timestamped GitHub commits from my personal ID, proving I built 85% of Zair's backend in the first 16 months. Even Araf's WhatsApp message saying, "You'll always be co-founder #1. Paperwork is formality. We documented everything. And we saved it in 3 different encrypted drives. I was building not a revenge, but a war file. But this wasn't enough. I needed something more. Something that would make the world stop. Something that could not be denied, even by Arav. And that's when I remembered the last investor contract. Series B funding. $12 million. And hidden deep in the agreement, a clause that said all original founders must be disclosed with truthful histories, or the funding could be recalled. If I proved Arav had lied about co-founders, the deal could collapse, and the company could bleed. All I had to do was make that contract speak. So I reached out to Mira. She was a senior associate at the VC firm that funded Arav. Brilliant, quiet, and we had history. We'd once shared a moment. Now, I needed her trust. I didn't beg. I showed her everything. The documents, the builds, the chats, the contract. Her hands shook. My God, Rogov. If this is true, he committed serious disclosure fraud. I know. And what do you want? I looked her dead in the eyes. Not revenge. Not money. I want the world to remember who built it. And I want the last contract. They built their throne on my silence. Now I was going to speak, but not with noise. With proof. And that's always louder. Mira didn't hesitate. She took everything I gave her, the documentation, the contract, the old files, and the photographs, and passed them to the VC firm's compliance team under urgent review for potential misrepresentation. But that wasn't the real move. The real move happened quietly. A surprise audit was launched, not publicly, but surgically, targeting Zair's Series B disclosures. The firm froze $3 million of the recent funding, pending clarity. And a private clause was activated that allowed temporary board intervention if founder misrepresentation was discovered. Arav didn't even know it had started. But I did, because Mira had me on a burner phone, sending me real-time updates. And every update was a countdown. Meanwhile, Arav began to feel it. The press started whispering. Zair founder under scrutiny? Hidden co-founder claims emerge. Old team members suggest deep silence in Zair's origin story. He tried to laugh it off. Posted an Instagram reel about jealous haters and how success attracts stories. Gave a podcast interview saying, "Some people confuse contribution with creation." But the tremble was in his voice now. I knew that sound. That was the sound of a man seeing his lies crack. Then came the board call. Unannounced. Arav joined with his usual swagger. But this time, 3 legal associates, 2 VCs, and 1 very quiet Mira were also on the screen. Before we proceed, one of the lawyers said, "We need to revisit the founder declaration from Series B. It appears there's credible evidence of an unlisted co-founder." Arav tried to scoff. This again? Just a bitter ex-employee. We have documentation, signed contracts, code records, and testimonial evidence. Silence. And then Mira, softly. Clause 18.6 of your Series B agreement states that misrepresentation of founder status is grounds for funding recall, asset freeze, and legal action. Arav froze. The same man who once smiled through lies now stammered. He said he needed time. He left the call. And the next day, I received an email. From Zair's legal team. Not from Arav. Dear Mr. Mera, we acknowledge your prior and substantial contribution to Zair Digital. The board is reviewing an amendment of founder status and equity restoration. A formal offer is being drafted. I didn't respond. Not yet. I wasn't done. Because this wasn't about getting my name back. This was about showing the world what happens when you try to erase someone who built something with his bare hands. The contract had spoken. But now, it was my turn to speak. You can erase a name from paper. You can delete it from websites. But you can't erase presence. And when the truth starts walking back through your door, you can't ignore its footsteps. I didn't respond to their first offer. Not even the second. They sent lawyers. Drafts. Clauses full of apologies disguised as settlements. 10% retroactive equity. Public acknowledgement. A revised co-founder title on official platforms. But I stayed silent. Let them feel the weight of my absence, now that it couldn't be ignored. Because this time, I controlled the narrative. And when I was ready to speak, I didn't go to them. I went to the press. One interview. That's all it took. I met with Naya Suri, veteran journalist, respected voice in the startup world. She knew the difference between a founder and a fraud. We sat in a quiet cafe. I placed the Dropbox on the table. Photos, contracts, chats, GitHub logs, legal memos, vendor letters, the early whiteboards, the chai-stained business plan. She reviewed it for 6 hours straight. No questions. Then she looked up and asked, "Why now?" I said, "Because they told the world a story that wasn't true. And now I'm here to correct the ending." The story broke like a thunderclap. The forgotten founder, Raghav Mehra, speaks out. Zair's real origins, what the contracts reveal. Series B under fire. Equity theft in one of India's top startups. News channels picked it up. Tech influencers weighed in. #Justice for Raghav trended for 3 days. And investors? They panicked. Then came the call from the board. Not a Zoom invite. A summons. They were reopening the cap table. And they wanted me to be present, physically, at Zair headquarters. The same building I had been thrown out of like a nobody, now wanted me to walk back in like I'd never left. And so I did. Employees froze. Some whispered. Some stepped aside. Some looked guilty. Arav was already in the boardroom. His face pale. The same face that once called me Shadow. I stepped in. Mira nodded. And I finally spoke. I built this company with my bare hands. You erased my name. But the truth didn't need my name to survive. It just needed time to speak. The board reinstated me. Officially. Legally. Publicly. 50% co-founder equity, retroactive. Founder's bio restored. Press conference announced. And Arav? Removed as CEO. Effective immediately. He didn't even fight it. He knew it was over. And for the first time in years, I saw fear in his eyes. I stood in the boardroom, reclaimed, re-recognized, and restored. But I didn't feel victorious. Not yet. Because this wasn't just about justice. This was about choice. What do you do when you're given back the empire that was stolen from you? Do you rebuild it? Or do you reduce it to ashes, so no one ever forgets what it cost? They gave me control. With Arav ousted, the board handed me interim CEO power until a final vote. The media hailed it as a story of redemption. I was invited to every panel, every conference, every tech summit. But I didn't say yes. Not immediately. Because I had one more move left. One that Arav never saw coming. The last contract. Remember that? The same Series B agreement that triggered his unraveling. It had one more clause. A buried exit trigger, created as investor protection, rarely activated. If at any time the founding party is found to have engaged in malicious misrepresentation, the co-founding partner holds sole discretion to trigger acquisition talks or initiate dissolution proceedings, pending board majority. I now held that clause. And I had the votes. I called for a vote. The boardroom was silent. Across the table, Arav sat, no longer in his branded hoodie, but in a wrinkled shirt, the bravado gone. He spoke for the first time in weeks. "You don't have to do this," he said. "We can run it together. Like old times." I smiled. "You don't get to ask for old times after you erased me from them." He tried again. "Raghav, without me, the brand suffers. I am the face. And I'm the backbone, I said quietly. Let's see what stands when the face is gone. The vote passed. Unanimously. Zaire would begin acquisition talks. The startup we built together was now up for sale. And I, the erased ghost, was the one who pulled the plug. 3 months later, Zaire was acquired by an ethical fintech firm. They retained all employees, vendors, clients. They asked me to stay on as chief of product. I declined. Because I didn't want a throne. I wanted freedom. And Arav? He disappeared from the industry. Word spread quickly. Investors blacklisted him. Startups distanced. Podcasts stopped calling. And in a final, poetic twist, I bought the rights to the original Zaire branding. The same name my mother gave me. I now owned it, and I kept it locked. So no one could ever wear it falsely again. Epilogue. The last word. I walk by that old fruit vendor sometimes. The one who used to take payments through our first app. He still remembers me. Still offers me chai. And every time I sip it, I think of the line Arav once said. Tera nam mir dil min hai. Turns out, he buried it so deep, he forgot it was also in ink. Ink that spoke. When it mattered most.